Hello everybody and welcome back to Screen Stars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2019 science fiction action film Gemini Man, a film that is directed by the legendary Ang Lee, and it stars Will Smith, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Clive Owen and Benedict Wong. Now this film follows Will Smith's character Henry Brogan, who is essentially a hitman who pulls off a hit at the beginning of the film and then foolishly decides he's going to retire. And we know what happens to hitmen who decide they're going to retire. His handlers and government agencies that he works for decides, as they usually do, that they're a loose end, all that kind of stuff, and they decide to send somebody after him to take him out. And who they choose to send after him is a hitman designed from the Gemini project, and it actually turns out to be a cloned version of Will Smith and a younger version of himself who is sent to take him out. So that's essentially the story that we get here, and if you've seen the trailer, everything I've just said there is kind of in the trailer. Now this film, I think, promised so much. Will Smith, we know, has got a wonderful track record when it comes to action films, and the trailer made this film actually look pretty interesting and very, very watchable. I mean, Ang Lee, Will Smith, the concept alone with a younger Will Smith chasing after the older Will Smith trying to take him out sounds really interesting, even though we've kind of seen that time thing over and over again, you know, but not maybe so much the clone thing. Unfortunately though, what we get here is a surprisingly generic science fiction action film that I think if it wasn't for the concept of this young Will Smith on screen chasing a 51-year-old Will Smith, would be very, very forgettable, this film in general. But that isn't to say that overall there isn't some enjoyment to be had, because there really is. I mean, some of the action that we get on display here for the most part is very, very passable. There's some inventive action scenes, especially as a really good motorbike chase. There's some really good fight scenes, in particular between the young Will Smith and the old Will Smith. There's not enough of them, if you like, maybe, and the first 15-20 minutes is a bit dull and drawn out. It just feels incredibly generic. That's all I kept thinking while I was watching this. I just thought it felt like a Netflix film. It didn't almost feel like it belonged on the big screen to me. It was just a little bit generic and a little bit dull for the most part, but I was entertained by it at the same time. I think it was probably because I was expecting or hoping for a little bit more, and we don't get it. I did find it refreshing that Mary Elizabeth Winstead's character Danny, who played like an agency member who was sent to keep an eye on him when he retired, she gets drawn in and becomes like a partner for Will Smith, and she is in no way damsel in distress. She's pretty badass. She could look after herself, and I thought that was nice. That was really, really good to see, because I was a little bit worried that it was going to be a bit like the damsel in distress scenario, and that isn't what we get at all with her. So I enjoyed her character. Benedict Wong's character was essentially just there to fly him around the world, and that was it. And Clive Owen's character was full-on pantomime villain. Terribly fleshed out. There was supposed to be this past history between him and Will Smith, and you just didn't get that history at all. You didn't get that sense of that they knew each other at all, and I just didn't get that connection. It wasn't well written into the film, and we were supposed to believe that Clive Owen's character raised this younger version of Will Smith, this clone version, as his son. But he's like the worst father ever, and completely scarred this young man. There's so much about this film, and there's so terrible exposition scenes reiterating the fact that yes, he's your clone, and all this kind of stuff going on. It was just a bit dumbed down for audiences. You just don't need to explain some things. We know it's a cloned version of him. You just explain it in layman's terms to him and he'll get it, you know what I mean? He's an intelligent man. but they just kept banging it home, banging it home, banging it home. The special effects on display here were very good for the most part. The de-aging process that we have seen now on a few films, especially in the Marvel films, the de-aging stuff that they did with Kurt Russell in Guardians of the Galaxy 2, I thought was brilliant, and for Samuel L. Jackson in Captain Marvel was again very, very impressive. Now for the most part here, the de-aging process they've done with Will Smith I thought really, really worked very well, and it was jaw-dropping at times, and then at other times it was a bit sloppy. There's a couple of scenes where it was almost like they thought, that'll do. It was like, no, that'll do, don't worry about that, it looks alright. And I just thought the attention to detail let it down a little bit sometimes too. But I feel as though I'm giving this film a little bit of a hard time, but I did enjoy it. It just felt terribly generic, and the story was nothing to speak of at all. It was just paint by numbers Hollywood script, and nothing particularly special about the film. And if it wasn't for this cloning story, it would just get lost in the pack, this film. But I'm giving it a 7 out of 10 because Will Smith's always charismatic on screen. The action is very watchable at times, and it's a pretty enjoyable film. It's just disappointing, and I was hoping for more.